welcome to the Alex Salmond Show, where Alex goes to the movies with his all-time idol, Robert the Bruce. In our exclusive interview with film star Angus MacFadyen, we examine whether a film about Scotland's hero king can actually portray an anti-war message.
I wanted to avoid all of the glorification of war scenes and really explore the loneliness of a guy who has realised that really it wasn't worth it.
And good King Robert sets out his hopes for the future.
And you got a political prediction on this, the end game of this new struggle in terms of Scottish independence against this European backcloth?
Well, you know, I've got my hopes and dreams, as you do, and you've got to do the groundwork in order to be ready. The readiness is all, as Hamlet says.
All that to come. But first, your tweets on last week's show featuring political blogger Wings Over Scotland, which broke all viewing records on Alex's Facebook page. Colin says, "Good interview. Wings has been a fantastic read over the years. The UK media must absolutely detest him as he constantly makes them look so stupid. If his blogs weren't any good, then nobody would be talking about him. Keep up the good work." Shirley says, "I enjoyed your interview with Stuart Campbell. Sometimes when you host strangers, you find winged angels." B. Griffiths said, "Really interesting interview about Scottish politics and politics in general. Definitely worth a watch." Greg says, "The first Wee Blue book was read by most of my family. They don't need convincing now. Waiting somewhat impatiently for the next one." Thanks, Stuart, and thanks to all those who contributed. And a big thanks to Alex for having him on your show. And finally, William Ramsey says, "Loving this wee Robin moment." Let's take a look.
Again, that's still the whole point of kind of Wings Over Scotland, is to get to a referendum and have put another Wee Blue book in people's hands.
But if Alex has his Robin, then Robert the Bruce has his spider. And that is where Angus MacFadyen portrays Scotland's national hero in the winter of 1306, on the run from his enemies and himself. In a very contrasting style from the blockbuster Braveheart, this new portrayal postulates how the simple patriotism of a peasant family helped the Bruce overcome his own crisis of confidence and lead the country to freedom.
That's them. Hi.
Quick, get inside.
You've changed me. You've changed the king I'll be and the land we'll live in. Now, if it comes to a fight, some of us might not see the sunset, but that is the true nature of war. But know this. I see now, in your eyes, what Scotland can be. You've felt her fear and her rage. You've heard the roar of her soul. You've wept her tears and you've shed her blood, and you have touched the cold, cruel skin of her death. We have known Scotland, clutched in the grip of a mighty hand, and now we'll set her free. Is that not worth fighting for?
Aye.
Aye.
Angus MacFadyen, I'm delighted to be joined with your new film, Robert the Bruce, playing on screen. Your dad worked for the World Health Organization.
He did, yeah.
And so you travelled a lot. So
Yes.
although you're very Scottish-centred, you had lots of international experience as a boy.
Moved around for my entire childhood, but every summer or winter we would come back to visit my grandparents, who originally were from Barrhead, but moved to Collington. So we would go to 4 Elliot Road and stay for a couple of months every year. When I came to Edinburgh University, I came from Strasbourg, where I'd done a year of law, discovered that Napoleonic, the code, was not to my liking, and came to Edinburgh to do international relations, because I thought I'll go into politics. And I sort of one day had a voice which sort of stopped me in the middle of the road about 6 weeks in, and it just said, don't do that, don't do that. I sort of tend to listen to these instincts, you know. And I changed my course and went into English and French literature and language, and I was doing the Bedlam Theatre here, which is, I did 35 plays and 5 fringe festivals. And I never really asked myself why I'd done it until 2003, when, because I'd have probably become a Labour guy, I think, because this was the 80s, and I discovered that I'd have probably gone into the Labour Party in some sort of, as a politician somehow, and I would have been faced with this dilemma in 2003. Am I going to resign because of this illegal invasion?
This is the invasion of Iraq, which for many Labour supporters was a seminal moment. It
was, because people were either lost their soul or lost their jobs. Very many of them lost their souls, I believe, at that moment. And so I sort of had this sort of illumination, because it was like, oh, that was what that voice was telling me, to take a different path here. So you were saved from becoming a Labour politician, despite your interest in politics, and you did some hard graft in the theatre. And then you got a huge break in the international blockbuster Braveheart, and you played Robert the Bruce. I was asked to come in for the English prince in it, and I said, and the casting director, Patsy Pollock, said, no, you're going to play Robert the Bruce, but you can't, because it's been offered to a movie star, so forget about that. Come in and meet Mel and talk about this role. So what did I do? I went in, having not worked for 9 months, and he said, so you want to talk about this role of the English screen? I said, no, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about Robert the Bruce. So you're telling me you could have been Edward II, yes, as opposed to Scotland's hero king? That's correct. And I was in there for an hour and a half, and he was like looking at me looking at the casting director like, why is he talking about this? And he said, so, okay, well, it was great to meet you. You don't want to talk about the other guy? I said, no, I'm good. Good luck with your movie. And I left and kicked myself for days afterwards, thinking, I haven't worked for 9 months, what am I doing? But I got a phone call 10 days later, and I was asked to come back to see him. I was like, Christ, what have I done now? I've done something wrong, you know? And it turned out that the actor who'd been offered the role was trying to get a role in the other Scottish film, which was being made at the time, the Rob Roy one, which was considered the more superior script. So everybody wanted to be in the other one. This one was like the cheesy Hollywood thing, right? So I got invited back, and it turned out that this other actor had let the day go by which he should have accepted the offer, so they withdrew it and gave it to me. So there was a sort of element of destiny in that. In such a successful thing like Braveheart, did that put you in a kind of different position as an actor, or being able to pick and choose roles, or is it a struggle for everyone? It's a roller coaster, our business, and you're up for a moment. You're in a film with 5 Oscars, and it's got 11 nominations, and you think, well, that's me set for the rest of my life. We'll bring on the next one. And then you have like a couple of films. I did a film called Titus, which had Hopkins and Jessica Lange and this incredible cast of people. Julie Taymor directing Shakespeare. I did a film with Tim Robbins with just a stellar cast, including Vanessa Redgrave, Bill Murray, Susan Sarandon, John Turturro. And I was, this was 1998, and I was like, oh, I'm riding high. I did The Rat Pack with Ray Liotta from Goodfellas. And I was like, I had these 3 fantastic films in a year. And 2 of them basically bombed at the box office, and suddenly the phone goes silent because you're no longer in favor, and so you'll spend a year with nobody calling you, and you got to find other things to do, writing or directing or painting, whatever it is that keeps the wolf from the door, as it were. But you've been, in terms of pursuing a dream, you've been pursuing a dream for I think 13 years. Yeah. You've had this idea of this script to tell the Robert the Bruce story some more to an audience who I think worldwide will be looking for something more, because it's a fundamentally interesting story. So where's that been driven from, Angus? Was that driven from your childhood, or driven from the success of the portrayal of Scottish history in Braveheart, people's interest in it? I mean, where does this come right from the guts, or is it just a fantastic idea for a script? I loved the experience of Braveheart, but I was slightly disappointed because the film ended, and And it was as if, okay, well, we don't need to know the rest of the story. And it's like, well, hang on, we've got a guy who became king afterwards. And so I wanted to make a more intimate film, and also a film which didn't glorify war, which was more of a, you know, an anti-war.
Robert the Bruce has broken with Edward. He's broken the king's peace. This is the King of England, Edward Plantagenet, most ruthless man in Christendom. And he's made his bid for the throne. So you've set it at that point of his life. Why?
I think it goes back to wanting to always tell a story which strips bare the pomposity and tells the story of a man. I'm far more interested in exploring a character's weaknesses or him at the lowest point of his life, you know, because that's where you discover the true character of somebody at that point, as to whether they lie down and die, or what was it that compelled him out of that cave. And that was really the story. It came back to being told the story of the spider, and it had never been told. And I kept on wondering, what is that story? What happens in that cave? Because, you know, the spider in psychology symbolizes schizophrenia. So when Robert the Bruce goes into that cave to die, because he wants to just give up, it's not death that he meets. It's this voice which starts to talk to him.
And of course, it's not just Bruce at that stage who's down in his luck. I mean, his brothers are getting knocked off all over the place. His wife is suspended in a cage from a castle.
That's right.
Anybody who ever knew him is getting either decapitated or ruined. So
Yes.
you know, at that stage, he must feel a huge sense of guilt that it's not just him that's being sacrificed; it's everybody he's ever loved.
Yes, and he's seen so much death, and he's witnessed the death, because, you know, you had young boys fighting at the time. So everything turns against him. It's sort of like the story of Bonnie Prince Charlie as well, isn't it? When he got within 100 miles of London and then turned around, for what reason we still don't really know. But those people who supported him all the way down were jeering and throwing eggs and cabbage at him all the way back, and it just sort of kind of all fell apart from there.
But you said something a few minutes ago. You said it's almost an anti-war film. Now, how on earth can the story of Scotland's hero king, somebody who takes on the might of the Plantagenet Empire and wins through battle, through warfare, how can that be an anti-war story?
Well, I think because I was going for a more intimate story in this telling of it. It's just I wanted to avoid all of the glorification of war scenes, and really explore the loneliness of a guy who has realized that really it wasn't worth it at the end, and funnily enough, he actually, even once he's healed again, he doesn't want to go back to war. It's the widow in the house who says to him, you know, all of those men who died for you will have died for nothing if you don't go back and finish this. Even at the end, he's still pushed by external forces towards his destiny. And I really like that, because it's like when you look at the world and you watch people who ascend to power, and there's so many modern examples right now. You know, it's in the pursuit of it itself. You see lies the seed of corruption. You see these people, and you almost have to be sociopathic to rise to these great positions, because there's so much. There's so many. You know, they do, as Donald Trump once said. I think he said they do very bad things, but we do very bad things here too, man. You know, it's that whole concept of you don't even know what's going on behind the scene.
Welcome back. Alex is interviewing Scottish star Angus MacFadyen, who almost 25 years after the blockbuster Braveheart has reprised his portrayal of Robert the Bruce, but in a very different film. However, will the new film topping the bill at this year's Edinburgh Film Festival have the wider political impact which has been claimed for Braveheart?
The Scottish Wars of Independence were actually fought against a backcloth of a whole European struggle that was going on. It involved the papacy, it involved the Plantagenet, it involved the Bruces, who weren't restricting their activities to Scotland. But you see the same sort of political background at the present moment with Brexit, the whole European argument, the argument how Scottish independence is now very interlinked with that European dimension, the impact of Westminster, the new Plantagenets at Westminster with a very domineering isolation, Empire Mark II approach, perhaps. Are you seeking a direct analogy between the early 14th century Scotland and early 21st century Britain?
I see it very well right now because I mean I think that we still live in medieval times. We live under the perpetual state of feudalism, and I think that this independence struggle is a struggle to shake free from ancient concepts and move into a progressive future. And I think this is the story of really of one of the first progressive kings. So I am hopeful that this film will have some kind of a cultural impact.
Your film's hitting the cinemas. Yeah. And the anniversary of the Battle of Bannockburn now, was that deliberate or was that a happen chance?
The anniversary, no, it was definitely not a deliberate thing. I was kind of surprised that the 23rd, wait a minute, what is that? There's something, it turned out that we were opening the film on the anniversary of Bannockburn, which I thought was just a wonderful touch again by some kind of invisible hand. And you know, I just want to say that, you know, it's incredibly important. Me and the director, myself and the director, we actually, that was our first thing was we wanted to open the film in Scotland, in Edinburgh, because we wanted the Scots to see the film first. This is a film for Scotland, considering the events which are going on. And don't forget that a couple of years ago, we were nowhere near the mess which we are right now with this whole Brexit thing. It's just unraveling further and further.
You're someone as an artist who has a very active position in terms of social media. I mean, you don't hide your colours at all. I mean, you're straight out there with your views, not just on Brexit and Westminster, but Scottish independence. How does an artist reconcile that? I mean, do you think that's entirely legitimate, or do you ever say to yourself, "Wait a minute, I'm an actor," or do you think, look, art has to have a purpose?
I think art does. I think all art is political. Whether if it's being completely apolitical, that's still political. If you're making an incredibly violent movie, you're making a movie which glorifies violence. So you're making a political statement one way or the other. So, I'm more active on Twitter right now because I do have a film coming out, and it happens to be about the subject matter which seems to be consuming very many people's minds at the moment in this country. So I've waded into the middle of it. Usually I keep my views a little bit more private, but I'm a bit of a blunt talker, and I like to say what I think. As I said, I was going to be a politician, but I don't think I would have been able to do very well in the diplomacy department.
Your view on the Scottish psyche, why would it be reasonable to say that William Wallace was loved and Robert the Bruce admired?
I guess it comes down, I see it as some kind of William Wallace was always sort of seemed to be much more of a working class hero. And I think that was something which Mel definitely played on in his movie, with a little dash of Catholicism in there. And the Bruce, being a noble, there was a certain distance, a certain royalty that you shouldn't get too close to it. So, that kind of thing, I suppose. And
or was it because Wallace died and Bruce was a winner?
I suppose there is that, isn't there? That you have, you have the, it was cut into little pieces, wasn't he? So there's the Spartacus effect.
And why would it be that, for those who understand Scottish history and for those who know about it, and hopefully your film will reintroduce it to many more people, But even if those who know quite a bit about the story of Wallace or the story of Bruce or other many aspects of Scottish history, if you said the name Bernard de Linton, then 99.9% of the population wouldn't know the name of the person who actually wrote the Declaration of Arbroath. Why do you think that is?
Well, that's sort of like asking why nobody actually knows about the Darien jungle and what happened there, because
And that's another project you've got in mind?
Was it actually taught in schools? What were we being taught? And I'm not sure what you were taught when you were a kid, but I find things out all the time which I'd never heard of before.
I got, as you did, the story from, in my case, my grandfather's knee. And I got taken around the ancient Scottish town in Lithgow. And on my grandfather's eye, I got explained to me what had actually happened, as if it had happened last week or last month or the year before. And when I heard the stories of Bruce, in my mind's eye, I thought it maybe had happened maybe just before the Second World War or something like that. It was recent. It was immediate.
Yeah.
It wasn't something which was long lost in history. Will your film, if it's immediacy, you think that will offer people that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, if you can make a good film which reaches in and grabs people by the heart or the balls or whatever it is, it's not an intellectual experience, it is an immediate experience. And any good film, I think, does that. It sort of, it takes you inside these people's lives and you're seeing the human condition, and you're not sort of divided at that point. You're not going, well, I don't care about this guy because he's the bad guy. But you actually you become interested. You get caught into these characters' lives. So immediacy is the word there. So
Angus MacFadyen, we're going to do with the success of this film, we're going to now king on Good King Robert, as Bruce was called in the contemporary chroniclers. And then one on the Darien scheme, one of the great disasters of Scottish history, but a fascinating story. Some people say it's what ended Scottish independence back in the early 18th century. And what else? What else is in your immediate perspective? What else are you burning to do?
Well, I mean, there is that, and I've got that script ready to shoot in Panama and Scotland. And I've also, I don't think I've quite finished with this. First, I've got the other section of Robert the Bruce, but I haven't quite finished with The Cave, I don't think. And I think I've got a play which I've been writing about the spider and the Bruce, the cave being the actual theatre, the spider being the voice of modern. The modern world of living almost Kafkaesque, like a cockroach, except it's a spider and it's from Glasgow and everything. And this sort of old world, this guy in the cave, and they're having this debate about the world. And I just want to finish that.
And will you bring it to the Edinburgh Festival, where you cut your teeth all these years ago?
That's right. It'll be here, hopefully, somewhere like the Travis or the Lyceum or something. Actually, probably the Bedlam, where I started.
So, Robert the Bruce opens in Scotland tomorrow, the 28th of June, in the cinemas. And then, what are you hoping for the film after that launch in the old country?
It's slightly out of my hands, but I'm hoping for some interest from Europe. We're opening the Siena Film Festival in September, perhaps the Lugano Film Festival, and other places we're talking to, and then also the States. And I feel like this film would do quite well in Middle America. It's sort of that there are so many Scots and Irish there,
but also has universal appeal. I mean, this is a film about somebody overcoming their crisis of conscience, their uncertainty, their doubts, and being set back on the road. In that sense, it's really nothing to do with nationalism, because it does actually cross all boundaries, and it is a universal story. Or kingship, for that matter. It's about people getting back onto whatever their destiny was going to be. Yeah. Freedom. It's sort of like the tide coming in and going out. There is no line, really. These have been invented by man. These are man-made symbols. The tide comes in and out, and fish swim free every day. And you got a political prediction on this, the end game of this new struggle in terms of Scottish independence against this European backlog? Well, I've got my hopes and dreams, as you do, and
have a few questions for you after the show about where it's all going. But
that'll be the second interview. You interview me.
Yes, that will be the one. You've got to do the groundwork in order to be ready. The readiness is all, as Hamlet says.
Well, Angus MacFadyen, I've been doing my own preparation. Robert Bruce was Lord of the Isles, so he knew what a quaich was, Gaelic for a loving cup. Whiskey and a quaich, only Scotch, round all your pals.
Thank you very much, but where is the whiskey?
That would cost too much. Angus, thank you.
Thank you.
Braveheart was once described as a war cry of a movie. This new film by Angus MacFadyen is more of a cri de coeur. For MacFadyen, the legend of Robert Bruce and the Spider holds the key, a tale told to Scottish children down the generations. Hunted, alone, lost, cowering in a cave, the Scottish king sees a spider, attempts 7 times to spin his web before final success, and takes that as a sign to try once again and claim the crown and the country. In that sense, this story is deeply personal and universal about a human being overcoming a crisis of confidence to find their true path. In the film, Bruce also has the succour and support of the simple patriotism of ordinary Scottish families, the bedrock on which the nation has been built. That's less of a legend than the spider. Robert the Bruce may lack the Hollywood glitz and glamour of Braveheart, but it's a heart-rending story beautifully shot by people who know their business and their subject. Having tried for 13 years to make this movie, I would not discount the ability of MacFadyen to complete the trilogy and take the Bruce tale to denouement, nor would I underrate the wider modern-day impact of this magnificent story well told. Next week, we move from the medieval power plays to the politics of protest over the last century. We contrast working-class Glasgow taking to the streets 100 years ago with middle-class London taking to the theatrical boards today, protesting against HS2. Join us to find out who will win that new battle. And now from Taz and me and all at the show, it's goodbye for now.